Good morning. I am on day 2 of the Honeywell Educators Space Academy, and this is my first video blog. I did try to do one last night, but I was so tired that it was complete nonsense, so I'm trying to do it in the morning when I'm a little bit more awake. So I'm here in Huntsville in Alabama, representing the UK. There's actually another teacher from England and another teacher from Scotland, but we've not seen much of each other because we're in different teams. And this place is amazing. It's the US Space and Rocket Center, and it was set up after all of the Apollo missions finished, I'm pretty sure, and it's all to do with sharing NASA's work and its journey into space, and also the future of space and what's happening now, and trying to inspire young people to become astronauts or work in space science. What they also do every year is this Honeywell Educators Academy, which the idea is if they manage to inspire and train teachers, that those teachers can then go back to their schools and have an even greater impact with young people. So that's why I'm here. So big thank you to Honeywell. And so what was the first day like? It was amazing. Firstly, we got our spacesuits, which are quite wonderful. A little bit big, but you know, it'll have to do. And we've met some really great people. So yesterday morning we spent the morning with a guy called Ed Buckby, who was the NASA Public Affairs officer for the Mercury, Gemini and Apollo missions. So he would present photos to the journalists and things like that. He was there throughout all of that. I think particularly involved with those early astronauts, the Mercury astronauts on the race to space. He had great stories to tell about the race with the Russians, firstly to get the first man in space, which they didn't quite manage because Yuri Gagarin went up, but also then the race to the moon as well. So it was really interesting to hear the insights about what was going on in the background, and sort of some of the politics behind it all, and lots of funny stories about jokes that the astronauts would play on each other. And the testing that the doctors did on the astronauts before they went into space was horrific, so we saw some footage of that. The guy's actually written a great book, which he's signed and given us all a copy, which I'll be bringing back to school with me, which I'm looking forward to reading about, the Mercury missions and the race into space. And so that was a really, really interesting session, and he was really lovely, great at answering everybody's questions. Lots of questions were asked about sort of how realistic are some of the movies that have been made about those missions. So that was really interesting to hear his point of view on those. I got the impression that he didn't think aspects of them were entirely correct, but that they were still a really good way of telling the story and inspiring future generations. From there we've had a lot of photos taken. Yes, a lot of photos taken yesterday, hopefully not too many today, but a lady called Andrea Trebo, who works at the Rocket Center and works on all the camps, she came and gave us a presentation that was called Flight Hardware, which you might think the title of which might not sound so exciting, but it was fascinating. She basically compared the shuttle and how the shuttle worked and all aspects of it and how it took off and how it came back with the new space rocket for getting into space, which is the Space Launch System, the SLS. And basically the SLS seems to take the really good bits of the Saturn V rockets that got the astronauts to the moon, but has merged them with the best bits of the shuttle. And so this rocket's being designed for taking astronauts back to the moon, to near space asteroids, and hopefully onto Mars, which is the ultimate goal. So there's lots of talk about how we were going to get to Mars yesterday, and it's just very, very exciting, and so much science and physics. I'm getting lots of ideas of how to incorporate this into all aspects of the science curriculum, because it's not just actually the physics and the rockets. That's great, but when you start really looking at it and how the astronauts are going to survive in space, and how their body will be affected by near zero minimum gravity and things like that, you know, it's really, really interesting. And so yeah, she was fascinating. I've got some really good magic maths in there to take back to my school, from comparing the rockets and the speeds and the dimensions and things. Lots of good geometry in there as well. We also then, yesterday afternoon, I think probably was the highlight of the day, we met an astronaut called Hoot Gibson, Ed Gibson. He was first a Top Gun pilot, which is pretty cool as well, and then he flew 5 shuttle missions. I think he spent about 191 days in space in all, and so he told us all about that. He told us about his journey through life and how he ended up flying shuttles into space, but he also told us about all of his missions and showed us some great photos that he'd taken. I think he'd quite enjoyed being a photographer while he was up there. One of his photos is a really famous one that you might have seen. Astronaut, I can't remember his name, but when they had the MMU, like the rocket pack where they weren't tethered when they did the space walk but left, there's a picture of an astronaut sort of totally on their own in space, who took that photo, but he was also telling us about probably one of the big missions, and one I remember was when they went up to the Mir, the Russian space station, to help them out, which was the first time there'd been any sort of collaboration between the Russians and the US, and I think they went and collected 2 astronauts and took 3 up. I think I should probably call them cosmonauts if they're Russian, I think. And so yeah, so he was on that mission, and there's a really famous photo when they docked with the Mir space station of him shaking hands with the commander on the Mir space station, and then I think it was President Bush at the time made a comment about that being the end of the Cold War. So he was that guy, but he was lovely and answered loads of questions, told us all about the flight suits and what all the pockets were for, and just had lots and lots of funny stories about his time in space. And what was really interesting as well is his wife was an astronaut. They both met while working on the shuttles, so it was interesting to hear about that. He has not finished his adventures yet. I was reading about him actually. Once he retired from being an astronaut, he became a commercial pilot for Southwest Airlines, but he had to retire at 60 because they have rules about age, that you can't fly over a certain age. And I don't think he was ready to retire, because now he spends his time racing planes like you would race cars. So that was really interesting. He showed us some great shots there of him racing planes, and you know, he's so close to the ground and then the engines explode and things. It's like Formula One just above the ground in very, very fast planes. I didn't really know that happened, so that was really interesting too. So just a great day of meeting amazing, inspirational people, and today we're going and we're starting our mission. So I'm in Team Harmony. There's 15 teachers from all across the world, lots from America, which is great, but it's interesting to find out about their education system, and all the states seem very different, but we've also got people from Indonesia, from India, from Russia, so it's been great so far, and I'm looking forward to today. We're doing a simulated parachute landing in a lake today and helicopter rescue, so hopefully I'll be able to tell you all about that later. And yeah, end of day 1, space camp. Can't recommend it enough. More British teachers needs to come over here. Speak to you soon. Bye.